And so I picked up the camera on the road, and they all went up there, and Gary said, just take that mirror with you. So we had a big slideshow with all my friends. What is that for? And I loved it so much. So they're walking along with the mirror, and I see this thing flashing as they move. The light is flashing. When I first started, I didn't have any music photos or wait a minute, stand still. And it was the moon coming up behind us, and the rock and roll photographer, because so that became people I photographed. Joni Mitchell, Jackson Brown, Jimmy Webb, the Eagles, and James Taylor. I don't think of them as rock and roll. Once again, we left the Troubadour at 2 in the morning when it closed. We drove out there in Land Rovers, climbed the mountain in the dark. Later, and it'll come later in the slideshow. I like to start out with just a few shots that up there. And I used to spend a very funny afternoon and friends up, and then the next evening, and we did the first album cover out there, right there on the left. And early one morning, I was driving up there with having fun out Gary Burton, and stopped, and I got down on my stomach with more fun than we should have had in the desert. I think this is the bag with the peyote buckets in here, and then we got to his ranch, and this is nearly always great fun, taken with a great big telephoto. And then here was for the Desperado album. Somebody once said we got to show a rundown movie set at Laguna. I loved to went out there and played cowboys one day, and they were this is Jackson Brown, our manager was Herbie Cohen. They just played cowboys. Suzanne Cohen in the front, and her friend Terry in the back there. At the end of the day, we went up the coast to photograph them one day. This was something I saw on the 101, right on the Hollywood Freeway. Luckily, I wasn't driving, or I probably would have crashed dead trying to take this picture with the posse. But I saw this car behind them with their rifles, which I guess they did a lot in the Old West. They were popping debris outlaws. And so we copied that picture. I can't wait till someday when somebody says, hey, that's me, that's my dog. So this was the first rock and roll picture I actually took, and they were my friends at Buffalo Springfield. I had known Stephen from way back in the folk days, and one day he asked if I wanted to go to Redondo Beach with him and the group because they were doing a sound check, and I thought, great, I'll go because I want to shoot people on the beach to show in my slideshow. And so that while they were doing their sound check, I was out on the beach photographing people on the beach. I found a guy with a monkey on his shoulder, and the monkey had the same haircut and little beard as the guy, and that was one of my favorite shots. So I didn't take pictures of Neil Young and Stephen Stills until I went back to the club when the sound check was over, and I was photographing that big mural. I was thinking, this will be good in a slideshow, and they walked out the door. And I said, hey, you guys stand by that mural, because I wanted to sort of show what size the mural was. I mean, I wasn't even thinking at that point, you know, there's a group. I'll photograph them and be a music photographer. So we took that picture, and then it got used in a magazine, Teen Set magazine, and they offered to pay me $100 to run that photo, and I went, oh my God, you mean somebody will pay me to do what I can't stop doing anyway? So that was a wonderful moment for me. And then back in the music days, I shared an apartment in New York City with a guy named Eric Jacobson, who produced The Lovin' Spoonful, and he was just starting to produce them. Yes, a great group. And so this was '66, and he said, Henry, you want to be a photographer? You want to learn how to be a photographer? Come out to New York, because I was back in LA by this time. He said, come back out to New York and spend the summer with the boys, because they need a lot of pictures, and we'll pay all your expenses, and then you'll learn how to be a photographer. So I did that, and they would never let me take a real group shot without trying to, ruin it somehow. Giving me the finger or something. Then right after that, I came back to LA, and a magazine, a teeny bopper magazine, Tiger Beat, called me and said, can you go down to the Monkees TV set, TV lot where they were filming the Monkees show, and they said, we'll pay you for the day, and you just shoot a bunch of pictures for our magazine. So I went down there and met these guys and became such good friends that pretty soon they wouldn't let anyone else take their picture. And so I became the Monkees photographer. So once a week, they'd have a different episode every week. So on Monday morning, I would get down there and you would see what the theme was. I mean, it would either be people in gorilla suits or, Martians or,
I mean, in this case, this was called, I think, Here a Chic, There a Chic. Is that right, Gary?
Everywhere a chic chic.
Oh, everywhere a chic chic. Okay, so there it was, and there was a dozen harem girls, and it was always a lot of fun. I mean, and then for the whole week they would be filming that story. Here's David Cassidy and the UCLA cheerleaders. Well, I used to go to Don Henley and Glenn Fry's house up in the Hollywood Hills before they were really that well known, and they would watch a UCLA football game, and they had a joke. They'd say, "Hey, call Irving and have him send a limo for the cheerleaders." Irving Azoff was their manager, and they were just being funny. And I told that story to David, and a magazine said, "Would you ask David if he has any ideas for a home story?" And he said, "Yeah, tell him to send a limo for the UCLA cheerleaders." So they did, and they were happy to come up and brought those outfits. And David became really good friends with the girl on the far right there. Her name was Delight DeBrun. And these were famous, these for several years, they were the UCLA cheerleaders in basketball and football. So we have this picture on our wall in Soho on our gallery, Morrison Hotel Gallery. And one day a guy came in and walked right over and said, "Hey, that's my wife." I wasn't there, so he didn't hear the story. This is a picnic in Mama Cass's backyard. Mama Cass was a real earth mother and a very wonderful, friendly, warm, witty, funny lady. And she would meet these English boys, English groups that would come over to, and she was in the Mamas and Papas, of course, and then on the same show she would meet these groups, and they didn't know anyone in town. So she met Eric Clapton there on the right in Cream. And she said, "Well, why don't you come up to my house? We'll have a little picnic in the backyard, and I'll invite some friends." So she invited Mickey Dolenz, who came up, and David Crosby in the back there. And David brought this new singer that he just found named Joni Mitchell. And nobody had ever heard her yet. And she sat there singing, a dozen of her amazing songs from her first album. And Eric Clapton just couldn't believe it. She plays tuned to a chord, so you could see she's just barring right across the fret, and he I guess, didn't really know much about that, and he was fascinated. He hardly spoke a word. He was very shocked. Linda Ronstadt, back in the old Troubadour days when she was probably about 19. And this is Mama Cass. There she is, the very lady. We did this out in Palm Springs. We left the Troubadour at 2 in the morning in a limo and got down there just about daylight. And we went out on the sand by the highway and started shooting in the early morning. And by the time, like at 7 o'clock, when the sun was up, her makeup was melting down her face. It was, 100 and some degrees. And so we had to check into a motel and sit around the pool all day, and went back, in the afternoon about 5 o'clock and took this picture. It was supposed to be an album cover, but it didn't get used for that. It got used for a billboard on Sunset Strip. Here's Joni Mitchell up in Laurel Canyon, behind her house. Very, very, very fine house. And she's playing her dulcimer. This is my art director partner, Gary Burden, that we collaborated on many album covers. That's his daughter, Amy, who now is, 40, 50, something like that. She was one of my favorite subjects back in those days. There she is, yeah. That was a fun day, gosh. All these pictures bring back memories for me, This is Tina Turner at the Forum, and I was shooting for Capitol Records. I didn't give them this picture because I thought, well, gosh, they're not going to use that picture because it's not very flattering. And I thought this is an example of sometimes when you're a photographer and you're up right in the front, it's not really the best place to be because you're looking right up, straight up at the person, and it's not always a good vantage point. So I always thought, well, this is kind of unusable. And a lady had a big show at the Brooklyn Art Museum
called Who Shot Rock, and she came over to my house to look at photos, and she just raved about that, and she made it the poster and the banner, and it was on buses and billboards all in New York City, and you know, it's kind of dynamic, I guess. Apparently Tina saw it and she liked it. I thought she would kill me. John Sebastian, when he was finished with 11 Spoonful, he moved to LA and he lived in a place called The Farm, which was a commune. Hi, Judy. A commune behind what's now the Oakwood Apartments. And there was a lady living there named Tie-Dye Annie. And Tie-Dye Annie taught him how to tie-dye, and he tie-dyed everything he owned. That's his tent. He lived in a tent. Here's his clothing line, his laundry. This is James Taylor. I got a call one day. A lot of these pictures start with a phone call. I'm in my kitchen in Laurel Canyon, and the phone rings. It was Peter Asher, and he said, "Could you come down to my house this afternoon and take some photos of James Taylor? We need some publicity pictures." So I came down there, and I walked in, and he was sitting right there on the floor, and he was finger picking "Oh Susanna" in that great way that he can pick the guitar, you know, and it was, I couldn't believe it. It was so beautiful, like a music box. So I just got down on my knees and started shooting. I said, "Could you play that again?" And we took pictures. And then I said, "Well, we need to get outside somewhere where I can take a really nice portrait of you." And so we went to the farm once again. And this is an old farm truck that was parked there. And then we went up to one of the little sheds. I knew there were little barns and sheds there. And so we went up there, and I took this picture. So my job was to take black and white pictures. Incidentally, this book, Unpainted Faces, is a collection of black and white photos. Even though, in the beginning, I didn't care at all about black and white photos. I only wanted color photos because I wanted slideshows. But people needed black and white, like they needed black and white photos for publicity. So I took this photo, and it looked so good to me, and he had this blue work shirt on, and I just said, "Wait, just stand there a minute, don't move," and I got my color camera, and in my mind I was thinking, I'm going to get one shot for myself so I can show my friends and put it in my slideshow, and then that became the album cover.